The Trolls of Glastonbury, Book 1, The Amulet, Chapter 1. Early one dusk, 40 years ago, on the 7th Sunday of Easter, May 19th, in the year of our Lord, 1375, a small 3-person boat floated quietly down the Ouse River. The boat contained my educator and guardian, Father Robert of Blackpool, an old peasant woman I had never met before and who had not spoken a word to either of us all afternoon, and me, a boy of 12, who had not spoken a word to anyone in over 6 years. The only other occupant of our boat was a rooster who sat on my lap and stabbed his head at the air. Though there were no visible signs of intelligence on this rooster's face, he somehow seemed to be taking in the darkening sky, the omnipresent chorus of crickets, and even the less distinguishable sound of the oars gently dipping into the water. In retrospect, I think this rooster, more than any of us, sensed that we were all gliding toward our individual, yet equally unimaginable fates. Father Blackpool had never behaved so strangely before. It was uncharacteristic of him not to tell me where we were going. Usually on trips he thought aloud for my amusement or instruction and would blather non-stop about theology, philosophy, chess, beer, and horses. But this evening he was brooding and studying each star as it appeared. Gray and somewhat infirm at the ripe age of 47. Tonight he looked even older. Why would he not reveal our destination? I thought we had traveled 9 days to York to visit some prelates, see the cathedral, and celebrate the feast of Corpus Christi. But here we were, 7 miles downstream of York, surrounded by a most imposing and threatening wilderness. I had learned to trust the old priest in my 5.5-year acquaintance with him. He had taken me under his care and showed ample fatherly affection for me. I had seen him work long hours preparing sermons, feeding the poor, marrying the hopeful, tending the sick, and burying the dead. I had seen the wounds he received as a young man fighting for King Edward at the Battle of Crécy and in the siege of Calais. And I even heard the well-circulated stories of how the Prince of Wales himself knelt before the wounded young knight and begged him to lay his hands upon him, as his prayers were said to be very effectual, and it was rumored even then that he had miraculous powers of healing. But now it occurred to me that nothing added up. Why would a young warrior who had gained the favor of the prince exchange his armor for a tattered traveling cloak, an armload of weather-beaten and obscure books, and a poor country parish that always seemed on the verge of starvation? And how could such a priest dedicated to such a parish suddenly leave his flock to go on numerous visits, pilgrimages, and even holidays? And how could such a man never lack for meat? And how could he afford to drink 1.5 gallons of beer a day? The fact that he had connections everywhere we went suddenly seemed less a blessing than a reason for suspect. But my speculation was interrupted when our silent old woman growled, "There." Ahead on the shadowy bank was a mound of dirt and logs, 5 feet high, covered with sticks and leaves. If this mound were not in the woods beside a smoking pot that smelled of cooked rabbit, I would have mistaken it for a haystack. The rooster in my lap became even more nervous and flapped its wings in protest. I looked with my most earnest, inquiring expression at my pensive benefactor. He looked straight ahead without blinking. The old woman's dirty face broadened into a toothless expression of rapture, and she made an inarticulate succession of vowels that I thought then was moaning, but I think now was laughter. Finally, Father Blackpool uttered, with almost breathless trepidation, one quiet, mysterious word. Nehtaehkin. When the boat skiffed onto the river's bank, I had a better look at the mound. On top was a small chimney. A square door led inside, and a stick protruded from over the door on which someone had hung a half-dozen dead rats. To the right of the door lay a fawn's leg, infested with maggots. My nervousness turned to fear, and I squeezed the rooster so tightly that it crowed. The old woman added to my unease when she sat next to the fawn's leg in a rather indecorous position, picked up a maggot, and began singing to it in what she must have thought was maggotese. Father Blackpool ignored this, knelt down facing me, placed his hands gently on my shoulders, looked intently into my eyes, and said, "Don't be afraid, Thomas. You are about to meet your first troll, and perhaps your final one. He is one of the last trolls in all of England. He has survived because he is clever and his magic powerful. He's not pretty to look at, but remember that he's a creature of God, and I consider him a friend of mine. He does not reveal himself to many humans, so try not to stare at him. He might just take it the wrong way and eat you. Just stay by my side, and as you are quite accustomed to doing, say nothing." With that, he stooped down, opened the door, and went inside. I quickly followed. As I have mentioned, the outside of this edifice was round, but the inside was square, and somehow seemed considerably more spacious than the exterior suggested. It was neither as dark nor as damp as I expected. Small coals glowed inside a stone hearth, and candles burned on a table. Over the hearth was a mantel on which sat an eclectic mixture of objects: a snake skin, a horse tail, a pointed red hat, an assortment of bells, a human jawbone, some colorful rocks, and a small wooden statue of the Magdalene. Over the mantel was a goat head, expertly preserved, with red stones for eyes. This goat head looked disproportionately large, since all the furniture was eerily diminutive. The only other objects of disproportionate size were the books shelved along an entire wall, some of which, when opened, must have exceeded the size of his table. "I like to collect junk," said the troll as he poked his head through a trap door in the middle of the floor. Was it his visage or his voice that surprised me most? His face was as wrinkled as a raisin, his eyes large and brown as a fox's. His head was bald, except for the gray hair which protruded from his pointed ears and chin. His nose, or rather his snout, was also decorated with fine gray hairs, some of which hung mustache-like over his tusks. The only way to describe his voice, and it does not do him justice, is to say that it sounded much as I had imagined a grown pig would sound if it had been granted the gift of speech. As he ascended from the lower room, it became obvious that he had a mere inch of a neck. He was clad in a dusty brown coat and orange hose with purple patches sewn onto them. His legs were short and stocky, but his arms reached almost to the floor. His feet were hidden in his fancy black curled-toe boots, but his hands were exposed, hairy indeed, with an impractically short thumb and two middle fingers that were at least twice the length of his other two fingers. "Stop staring at me, boy, I'll bite your nose off." Apparently his tongue was not sufficiently formed to pronounce S's or Z's. Of course, I was not thinking this at the time. I was too busy hiding my cowardly face in the Reverend Father's robe. "You said nothing about bringing a boy," continued the troll. "Boys are unpredictable. You have put me in danger yet again, Robert, you dung bowl of a priest." "Calm yourself, Nettie," the priest replied. "The boy is mute. And to be fair, how many times have I put myself in danger to steal statues and relics for you? Not to mention being seen with your witch friend, which could get us all killed. Besides, as you see, The boy has brought you a peace offering." Without warning, the troll seized the rooster, whom I had forgotten was in my arms, bit off its head, and swallowed the rest of the body whole, save for one wing, which he tore off to suck and savor. The rooster's head lying lifeless at the troll's feet, he wiped the blood and feathers from his beard, sucked his fingers, and grinned. "It has been a long time since I have had poultry. I would risk an arrow up the arse for a toothsome tidbit like that." "Do you have what I came for?" inquired the priest. "Of course. It is an even exchange. I loan you one of the rarest relics in Christendom. You give me a chicken." "So you have it. You actually have it. What you have boasted to me these many years ago is true?" His deep voice quivering, Father Blackpool was unable to contain his excitement. "Of course. It is just a finger." "Just a finger indeed. We are talking about a holy relic of unmeasured power. We are talking about the index finger of Saint Joseph of Arimathea, the man who begged Christ's body from Pilate and donated his own grave to accommodate the Savior." "Even he." The troll seemed bored. "Well, where is it, you churlish little mischief maker? You will see it in good time. First, let me fix you some soup. Sit and rest. Look at your boy. He stared rudely at me, and now he will not look at me at all. What is he, an idiot?" "On the contrary, he is very intelligent. His mother died during his infancy, and his father was a blacksmith and an irresponsible drunkard. When the boy was 6, he had a dream in which Satan appeared to him, and he has been unable to speak ever since. But I acquired him on one of my trips to Southport, taught him to read and write, and now he is quite literate, if still a bit shy. At any rate, he is useful, and earned his bread by copying Bede's ecclesiastical history for me word by word, which is more work than you have ever done in your 170 years, troll." "Talk not to me of work," grumbled the little creature. "Work is for those with nothing better to do with their time." And for emphasis, it seemed, he farted the longest fart I have ever heard and filled the room with a stench that made my eyes water. "Cry not, boy. You have only 520 pages left on your venerable Bede." How did he know that? I was never to learn. But I soon was to learn that he had more powers than anyone could predict. He busied himself with his soup, chopping roots, assorting leaves, and gathering rocks. Some of these rocks he showed me with pride. They resembled large legless bugs, save that they were made of rock, oblong and tripartite. Their heads were as large as the lower two sections combined, and they had multiple eyes, like those of a fly. "These ridiculous little gestures are actually sea creatures of another era so old that they have decided to turn to stone. Their kind vanished before Noah's flood and have long since gone the way of the unicorn. They are many times older than your Bible says the world is. You can tell by the energy they give off." He spat into the soup and tossed in some roots. "Do not blaspheme," cautioned the priest. "The Bible is not the same kind of book as Euclid's Elements. Nor is it obviously a magic book or a manual of necromancy, but the magic parts interest me. Your Christ was a respectable magician, and so were his early apostles. But he was unsurpassed. He even raised a couple of people from the dead, which is a trick I've never learned. Shellfish, maybe. Mammals, not for amateurs." He tossed the rock bugs into the pot. They came to life, wriggled, bumped into each other, curled up and died, giving off a pleasant odor of fish stew. "The reason Christ is powerful, you cretin, is that he is one with God." "There you go, trying to convert me again. Do not you know your church does not baptize trolls?" He poked a fork into his soup, brought out one of the bright red creatures, peeled off its outer shell, dipped it into some butter, and inserted it into my mouth. It was delicious. The three of us sat down at table together and partook of the soup, which is to this day undoubtedly the best soup I have ever tasted. Father Blackpool enjoyed the soup as much as possible at the small table, his knees nearly touching his chin. He and the troll discussed many things and enjoyed taking opposite sides. On politics, the troll predicted that the king would withdraw his troops from France by the end of the year and prepare to invade Scotland, but the priest disagreed. On astrology, Father Blackpool argued that true religion should discourage its practice and encourage philosophy. But the troll laughed derisively at this suggestion and asserted that the stars were necessary to predict future events and that the wise men would not have found the Christ child were it not for their understanding of astrology. They debated some finer points of theology, the priest defending the phrase, who proceedeth from the Father and the Son, the troll suggesting that the phrase, who proceedeth from the Father through the Son, would be more accurate. For the priest, this distinction seemed life and death. But the troll seemed interested in theology merely as he would any other science. Finally, they came to the central topic of their concern and the reason for Father Blackpool's visit, namely, the finger of Joseph of Arimathea. They recounted the story which some historians maintained to be true, but which others, more learned, rejected as legendary. That the apostle St. Philip sent Joseph from Gaul to be the first missionary on the island of Britain, and that he established the first English church in the town of Glastonbury. Apparently, this troll obtained the finger in a game of chance from another troll, who claimed that his grandfather had obtained it in a reliquary in Glastonbury 600 years ago. At any rate, this present troll, named Nehtaehkin, had tested the finger and found it authentic. Father Blackpool wanted the finger temporarily because he believed it could miraculously cure the granddaughter of an old friend of his who lived in York. The nobleman had written to the priest, offering him large sums of gold to come to York to visit his granddaughter, who had coughed blood for 3 days and was now feverish and near death. The troll inveigled the priest to confess that he had refused to accept the gold, whereupon the troll grumbled in another language and spat on the floor. My mentor tactfully turned the troll's attention from the gold by asking about Jesus' healing miracles, in which the troll apparently took great interest. The troll again expressed amazement and envy that Jesus was able to raise a girl from the dead, then related a story about a man named Buddha, who some infidels claimed to be God. According to the troll, a woman had once gone to this Buddha and tearfully begged him to raise her dead daughter back to life. Buddha agreed, but said that he would first need a black mustard seed from a house which had not experienced death. The woman went on a wild goose chase before she realized that this man was not an experienced magician. Father Blackpool's jaw fell. That woman should have returned to lecture Buddha on the nature of Christian charity. The troll shrugged. I would not have fallen for it. Everyone knows that black mustard seeds are useful in love potions only. Soon I realized that though the loan had previously been agreed upon, both the priest and the troll were politely yet artfully talking around the next order of business, that is, the terms of the loan, as if the one who first broached the subject was the loser. Finally, and surprisingly, the possessor of the relic acknowledged an inferior bargaining position by asking, What do you have to offer me for the use of this rare item? You know these things do not come cheap. I offer you this boy. The troll laughed and flared his wet, hairy nostrils. Do not turn so pale, Thomas, said the priest. The troll knows I am joking. To prove I am a Christian, Nettie, I shall ask you the following. What do you want in exchange for the use of this finger for exactly 2 weeks? The assassination of Pope Gregory XI. Richly comedic indeed, chided the priest. Very well, why not get me the amulet belonging to Percy Brigg? I foresee an important future for that amulet, because, as you well know, that amulet is Percy's most sacred possession. Nor have I seen Percy in years. Why not take my final piece of fairy gold? You know where you can put your fairy gold. Well, what then? The troll stamped his feet, fell onto his back, and rolled around on the floor. "Damn it, Robert! Make me an offer! Do not humiliate me so!" Father Blackpool procured a red velvet box from within his robe. "I can offer you this golden rosary, this beautifully illuminated book of Petrarch's poetry, this small astrolabe, and 50 pounds of dried and salted venison to be delivered within 1 month of the relic's success. And I have a jug of beer that says you would be most happy to throw in the restoration of my young apprentice's speech to the bargain." The troll leapt up, inspected the merchandise, snorted, spun around 3 times, and said, "You are pushing me too far, Blackpool. The boy's voice box was not even mentioned before. The book is well painted, but you are insulting me by bringing up the boy. If Satan took away his speech, it is not for me to pick a fight. Satan, after all, is a child of God. Your theology teaches you that." The priest, undaunted, said, "The terms are fair and you know it. This rosary belonged to Philip of Burgundy's niece, and I shall throw in the box, which is from Constantinople. The boy may not enjoy the method by which his speech must be restored. For him, the cure may prove worse than the malady. And you may not like it when he starts to speak. Both are chances I am willing to take. And to prove it, I have this jar of peppercorns for you to demonstrate my sincerity." The troll's eyes, I swear, doubled in size, and he lunged for the jar of peppercorns and with one motion emptied the entire contents into his large mouth. He chewed and devoured them with unimaginable fury. The sound of a pound of peppercorns bursting more or less immediately was unexpectedly loud, and the rare smell of freshly ground pepper filled the room. "Done!" The troll grinned, his yellow teeth and tusks speckled with the costly spice. "Come, boy." And without ceremony, he disappeared down the trap door, his gruesome hand bidding me to follow. I looked at my mentor for advice, but he had already turned his back to me. The decision to act, he seemed to be telling me, was now mine. I turned back toward the trap door and slowly descended the ladder with no feeling in my legs. When my foot hit the floor, the trap door slammed shut. The lower room was hidden in darkness. I was aware of nothing but the presence of shadows. The only sounds were of my own heart and breath. Then I felt the troll's breath, warm and damp on the back of my neck. I turned to face only a darker silhouette among lesser shadows. Gradually, however, through some candlelight that penetrated the boards of the trap door, I could see his eyes. And here I must stop. Modesty forbids me to go into detail about our tryst, which to any rational person must remain objectionable on several levels: our vast difference in age and appearance, and our sameness in sex, to name the obvious. Yet honesty compels me to write that the event was far from disagreeable. I can only speak for myself on this issue, knowing that my experience is rather unique, and remembering that Nehtaehkin was performing the moral equivalent of a medical operation. In the twinkling of an eye, I was no longer a boy of 12, but a grown man of 35. My body and mind, including my memories, which were shrouded in fog, were that of a man. Nehtaehkin immediately became a human man, fully grown like myself, and willingly, on both our parts, we made love. At another moment, he became a beautiful dark-skinned woman, while I remained a grown man of 35. Indeed, the very form and substance of the 35-year-old I became 17 years ago, and I tasted her charms with an uncontrollable passion. Somehow, he was literally playing with time and space. We ended on a large bed of silk, divided ourselves into a group of 4, and experienced every possible combination that nature had to offer. And Nehtaehkin seemed to whisper to my soul that pleasure itself was amoral, a gift from the Creator God, and could be enjoyed for its own sake without sin. For the first time in my life, I knew what Thanksgiving meant. It was then that I decided to be a priest. But I have been a priest my entire adult life, I thought, for 15 years. I looked at my mature hands and blinked, forgetting everything. And my hands were once again that of a 12-year-old boy, and I was fully clothed, and we had returned to the upper room. Father Blackpool's face was red. All he could say was, "Well, troll, that better have worked." "It worked for me," said the troll. "Thomas Kemp, what have you to say for yourself?" "I thought the story of St. Joseph's journey to Glastonbury was devoid of any historical foundation," I found myself saying hoarsely. "Why," I wondered, "is the priest so upset? Are we not going to go down the trap door?" "Rubbish," said the priest. "It is well known to be a fact. The troll claims it is true. After this miracle, how can you doubt it? You are aptly named Thomas, and the first thing to escape your mouth is rubbish." "Well, then we must waste no more time," I said. "We must hurry back to York with the finger of Joseph of Arimathea and save the girl's life." "It is already well beyond midnight," said the troll. "The journey is long, and I have foreseen that she will not survive the morning. Your success is doubtful." The priest frowned. "Then we have no time to lose. We must travel all night and return to York before morning." "When is Joseph of Arimathea's feast day?" inquired the troll. "Every Christian knows it is the 17th of March. Why?" "That was over 2 months ago. My point is that the finger will still be potent, but not as potent as you may hope. Be not too optimistic." "Now you tell us," I blurted out. "What kind of surreptitious, fraudulent troll are we dealing with, Robert? After all this, now he claims that the relic may not work." The priest put his hand over my mouth and said, "I hope you will not find it rude of us, then, Sir Troll, if we depart hastily in an attempt to achieve our desired goal." "Of course not. But before I hand over the relic, you must promise me one additional favor." I tried to protest, but my guardian kept my mouth pressed tightly shut. "What is it?" The troll spoke slowly. "That you take this vial of my blood and pour it in the fork of the road 3 miles south of Carlisle." "That is a long journey indeed," brooded the priest. "Yet this you must do, and return the finger to me by Trinity Sunday, or bear the burden of a troll's curse." "Then it is agreed. God buy ye, Nehtaehkin. May good luck and happiness be yours." "God buy ye, Robert, knight turned priest. May Christ your pains repay." The troll gave the priest a piece of bone wrapped in a black cloth. Father Blackpool reverently placed the relic in a small wooden box, and with that we departed, leaving the witch sitting trance-like by the door of the troll's house. The 3/4 moon lighted our path as we trotted briskly on the path to York, panting as we spoke. "Trinity Sunday!" I exclaimed. "That gives us only 2 weeks to heal the girl, journey to Carlisle, and return the finger to the troll. And what if this finger proves to be impotent? You've done all this for nothing. The troll should have warned you of that before the deal." "You have a lot to learn about trolls, Thomas. It is customary for the troll to explain the merchandise's defects after the bargaining is done. It is a sign of good faith on my part. The same with my forthcoming journey to Carlisle. With trolls, the most expensive sacrifice is mentioned after everything is sealed. All things considered, we made out extremely well." "Where does he come from?" I heard my voice crack and began to feel certain that none of this was really happening. "Trolls come from the north, Scandinavia mostly. They used to be plentiful in Yorkshire, but men began to hunt them for sport and because they eat chickens, goats, and dogs, and, if desperate, will attack a horse. Their magic helps with luxuries, but it cannot feed them unless they also hunt living things. and it is of limited use against a crossbow. To my knowledge, Nehtaehkin is the last troll in England. Our civilization has driven them out of existence. How did you meet him? We have no more time for questions, Thomas. But what of this relic? If, as you say, it is authentic, that could mean that Joseph actually did bring the Grail to England, and we could be in possession of a clue to the Grail's whereabouts. I am too old for such quests, puffed the priest. It is enough for me to touch a finger that has touched the Grail. More importantly, do you realize the finger I have in my pocket has lovingly tended the wounds of our dear Savior's corpse? If that is true, we had better make haste and hope it prevents us from having a corpse on our own hands. The moon is rising. He squinted his eyes sharply at me as he picked up his pace. I am sincerely beginning to regret that you have regained your voice.